When Wolverine first fought the Hulk in the Canadian wilderness, the results were pretty definitive. Wolverine couldn't penetrate Hulk's skin with his adamantium claws, so the best he could do was avoid Hulk's strikes, but at that time, Wolverine kept claiming he was too fast for Banner to hit. But that only lasted a short while. Once distracted, Hulk managed to hit Logan clean on his chin, knocking him out and winning the fight. But what if things turned out differently? What if, in that particular fight, Wolverine not only beat the Hulk, but his adamantium claws managed to slice clean through Hulk's neck and kill him? Well, that's what happened in this 1981 issue of What If, and that's the story we're going to tell today. But before we get going, it's important to remember, whenever something changes for the better in the What If universe, something always changes for the worse, and not that Hulk's death is good or anything, but in this situation, you can imagine that Wolverine's victory is a crowning achievement for the little mutant. So if we don't mourn the death of Bruce Banner too much and think about how much Logan's victory improved his status, then you can see how this is kind of sort of a good thing. In this alternate reality, things play out much like they did in the original fight in issue number 181 of The Incredible Hulk. Hulk was fighting the monstrous Wendigo in the Canadian wilderness. Now, the Wendigo is an interesting character in his own right. Basically, he's just another creature of myth that the writers at Marvel transformed into a modern character. The Wendigo was actually the result of an ancient curse. If anyone, for whatever reason, ate human flesh inside certain parts of Canada, then they would be transformed into an immortal beast. I know that seems like a pretty weird condition to put on a curse, but if you think of ancient tribes and how desperate even modern men can be when they're starving and lost in the forest, then this curse kind of makes sense. As we said, after hopping around the Great White North, Hulk ended up encountering the Wendigo. Fearing the brawl between Hulk and the white-furred monster would get out of control, the Canadian authorities actually decided to send in Wolverine to stop it. But after being struck by Hulk a few too many times and fearing that he might lose the battle, Wolverine decided that enough was enough and he was going to kill Hulk. Wolvie already knew that his adamantium claws weren't strong enough to break through Hulk's gamma-powered skin, mind you. He had already tried to draw blood throughout the entire fight, but Wolverine suspected that if he aimed a little bit higher and slashed at a weaker point, perhaps at Hulk's throat, he'd be able to cut through, eventually that is. So he changed his strategy and started hammering away at Hulk's neck, and after dragging his claws through his flesh enough times, Wolverine managed to dig into the green beast's arteries and the Hulk collapsed on the ground, bleeding out. Hulk's death played on every major news channel that night, and the heroes of Earth were conflicted, rightfully so. They all knew Hulk was a dangerous creature, but they also knew there was another side to him, or at least those who didn't know him as Bruce Banner suspected there was another side to him. Now, after killing the Hulk, Wolverine celebrated his life as one of the toughest fighters on the planet. On one particular night, high off his victory, he was partying in a bar with a few women and ended up in a brawl with a local. But take a second to think about this. Wolverine is a hero capable of killing the Hulk, one of the strongest beings on Earth. Even if he was just defending himself during a stupid, drunken brawl, he should still have enough sense to know that he shouldn't raise his hands against someone, definitely not a civilian. Even if Wolvie doesn't pop his adamantium claws out of his hands, a bare-knuckle punch from him is actually strong enough to kill an average man. But for some reason, the Wolverine of this what-if universe was really, really arrogant, and he ended up letting his pride get the better of him. In that drunken brawl, he popped out his claws and killed a random drunk guy. And that random guy happened to be brandishing a revolver at the time, so Wolverine could have claimed that he was just defending himself, but like I said earlier, if you're capable of trading punches with the Hulk, you should be the bigger man and walk away from a fight with a normal guy. Now, immediately after killing the bar patron, Wolverine had a realization about the terrible crime he had just committed, and he decided the best course of action was to just run away. He first went to Guardian, his direct superior in the Canadian forces, but Guardian told Wolverine that he should probably just turn himself in, which is the exact opposite of what the three-clawed mutant wanted to do. Furious that the government, and in this case, the Guardian was the representative of the government to Wolverine, couldn't help him cover up his tiny incident of murder, Wolverine went on the run. Eventually, Magneto and the Brotherhood would find him, and they offered him a pretty good deal. If Logan would go undercover and infiltrate the X-Men, Logan could stay with the Brotherhood, and they would protect him from prosecution in Canada. Now, Wolvie didn't really want to accept the deal, but seeing as he had no other choice, he agreed. And if you read the original 616 universe comics, then you would know that Wolverine's introduction to the X-Men was pretty different. In Giant Size X-Men #1, Xavier approached Wolverine while he was still working as Weapon X for the government and offered him a job with the X-Men instead. Wolverine, being a simple employee at the time, gladly accepted. Now, in this alternate reality, Wolverine actually just walked up to the Xavier Institute, and after a slightly cold welcome, Professor X immediately invited him to join the team. Wolverine spent several weeks trying to win the trust of the X-Men, and eventually, he was able to do that. The story ends in strange fashion when Wolverine has a change of heart and decides that he no longer wants to help Magneto in his weird, twisted scheme against Professor X. Wolverine eventually would die at the hands of Magneto. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope this was interesting for you, and I hope to tell you more stuff. Let me know if you like these new types of videos. I plan to make a lot more of these.